Produced by the Gulf of Guinea Maritime Institute, the Gulf Spectrum podcast is a vital platform exploring the future of maritime excellence across the region and beyond. With a strong regional focus and insightful conversations on critical maritime issues, the Gulf Spectrum podcast invites you to join the conversation today.
So welcome to the Gulf Spectrum podcast, a media platform that is managed by the Gulf of Guinea Maritime Institute, where we discuss the key issues and trends that are shaping maritime development in the Gulf of Guinea region. My name is Lawrence Dougli, and I'm your host for this podcast. And today we have the honor of speaking with Dr. Ralby, President of Auxilium Worldwide.
Thank you so much.
It's an honor.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So Dr. Ralby is a globally recognized expert in maritime security, law, and strategy with extensive experience advising governments, international organizations, and private sector entities across more than 90 countries. As president of Auxilium Worldwide, a charitable organization that focuses on global harmony and advancing sustainable development, Dr. Ralby specializes in advising complex challenges such as emerging maritime threats, resource-related crimes, and the integration of governance, security, and economic development in the maritime domain. Dr. Ralby is also a senior fellow at the Center for Maritime Strategy and an affiliate of the U.S. Naval War College and the Defense Institute of International Legal Studies. Dr. Ralby also spends time as adjunct professor of maritime law and security at the U.S. Department of Defense, the Africa Center for Strategic Studies, and the maritime crime expert for the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime. So, thank you very much, Dr. Ralby.
Thank you so much.
Once again for agreeing to do this with us. You are in Ghana.
Yes.
And I know this is not your first time.
Oh, it's great to be back.
Yeah. Do you mind me asking why you are in Ghana?
Absolutely. I was in Ghana last during the last few days before the world shut down in 2020.
Okay.
I was here in March. I was here for Ghana National Day and went home expecting to come back 2 weeks later. And 2 weeks has turned into 5 years. But I'm back this time with Auxilium Worldwide to look at the issues related to IUU fishing in Ghana. We've been hearing for many years about the challenges and problems of illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing and other fisheries-related issues. And this time I'm back with my own charitable organization. I work with my family, I work with others, where we have a lot of capacity to potentially really help try and change the conditions that continue to lead to the circumstances that we all talk about. And one of the things that I think we're really interested in is understanding those conditions, because you often see situations where an issue is brought to light, outcry comes, policy is even changed, and policy may even be implemented, but the conditions haven't changed, and so the problem doesn't actually go away. So to give a concrete example, years back I remember CNN did a fantastic expose on children being sold to fishers to fish in the Volta region. It was incredibly depressing. It was a very sad story. And the sale price was very, very low, and it was just a horrific condemnation of the challenges that come with true poverty. And boys were dying, they were drowning, they were living in horrible conditions. The outcry came, the policy came, the implementation even came with some arrests even, but the conditions never changed. The poverty wasn't released. The desperation that led to those sales in the first place did not change, and unfortunately, it continues to be a problem today. So the question we're looking at is how do we materially change the circumstances in order to reduce not just a certain issue for a period of time, but the overall environment which produces that issue. I
very much agree with you. You are looking at IUU but also looking more extensively at the conditions. And I think that is very key because while stakeholders and governments and various actors look at the very issue of IUU, it's also very important that they look at the cause and then the effect. And I think that is where the conditions come in, what facilitates IUU practices and what can be done to sort of address the issue in the very long term.
Exactly.
Right? So I think that is very relevant.
And I think long term is actually a great phrase to use here, because one of the things that drew me back to deal with this particular issue along with my team is that Ghana has the unfortunate position of being one of the few countries that has gone backwards on the yellow card. So Ghana had a yellow card, was able to change circumstances enough for the EU to release it from the yellow card, which prohibits certain engagement in the fisheries sector. And it is now back under a yellow card again, and has been for now a few years. And so that backsliding is an indication that the measures that were taken to reduce the concerns around the initial yellow card were not lasting. Yeah. And so we want to look at what would actually be lasting change. And frankly, Ghana can't afford not to have lasting change. If you go down to the fishing harbors and you see what the fishers are bringing in the morning, or what they are not bringing in the morning, you can't miss the fact that this is a critical, almost existential issue for Ghanaian coastal culture, Ghanaian coastal communities, and for the food security, economic security, and overall identity of Ghana going forward.
I think these are very, very relevant issues, and I think we would go into them in the later conversation. So I think we are already getting started into the discussions, and it's getting interesting. But I want us to go back to some of the very recent issues also happening in the region in terms of maritime crimes, more specifically on piracy issues in the Gulf of Guinea region. The Multinational Maritime Coordination Center, the ECOWAS Center is Zone F, which is hosted by Ghana, the Osu Council, recently shared some reports that I want us to look at and sort of analyze them and look at what are the key elements that are sort of shaping crime in the region. So let me pull up the very first one. This is ECOWAS Zone F incident report that was reported on the 6th of April 2025. It's a kidnapping on board FV Menjin, which I believe we can find a lot of very useful information to discuss. So, kidnapping on board MV Menjin. This incident took place in the waters of Accra, of Ghana. It's a Ghanaian flagged vessel, but name is Menjin. So that's quite an interesting one, Menjin 1, but it's a Ghanaian flagged vessel.
I'm not an expert, but does not sound like a Ghanaian name.
Yeah.
Yes.
So a brief background to the report. The information received indicates that the Ghanaian flag fishing vessel, so it's a fishing vessel, Menjin 1, was boarded at a particular position in Ghanaian waters at 1932 U2C on 27 March 2027. Now, this is the time that the Ghanaian vessel was boarded at this position, right, at a specific position in Ghanaian waters. It was reported on the 27th of March, right? So, according to the information, an unknown blue and yellow striped boat with 5 suspected armed persons came along their starboard side of the fishing vessel, right? 4 armed persons came on board and fired 3 warning shots into the air and ordered them to lay on the deck. Now, further reports from an observer indicates that the robbers were 5 in number, with 4 marks on and 1 without marks, holding 2 rifles suspected to be AK-47, and 2 robbers holding 2 sidearm pistols. Now, they were all wearing normal casual t-shirts and one rubber in an overall, communicating in Nigerian pidgin English.
Yeah, again, it doesn't sound Ghanaian.
Yeah. And then the captain tried sending distress messages to a sister ship but could not establish any due to the attack.
Yeah. So let me pause and pull up a couple of things on the ships here. First thing that I think is really interesting is it's an unknown vessel that approached the Mengjing. Ghana has over 12,000 local canoes, but they're known. This is an unknown vessel, and it's blue and yellow striped. It is believed to be from outside of Ghana. So that's an interesting piece. When it talks about the sister ship, it's also worth noting that this is the Mengjing 1. There are other Mengjings, and there are other vessels under the same ownership once you peel back a few layers as the Mengjing 1. So I'm not sure who they tried to contact, but obviously it is part of the fleet that's based out of Tema, and it's likely that they were trying to contact one of the other trawlers that would have
one of the other Menjings.
Maybe another Menjing or another vessel like there are other both trawlers and tuna vessels that might have been in the area. So it really depends on who they were after.
Does Menjing suggest a Chinese name?
Very much. I don't think you can get around the almost 100% certainty that the beneficial ownership ties certainly to People's Republic of China. Yeah.
So one might wonder why a Ghanaian flagged vessel bears a Chinese name.
There's a long history of this in Ghana. So Ghana law requires that the fishing vessels that are licensed in Ghana to either trawl or engage in tuna fishing be Ghanaian flagged and Ghanaian owned, and that the crew be primarily Ghanaian with the master or other officers also Ghanaian. Now, the reality is most of the fleet has names that would suggest that they are not Ghanaian, that they are indeed Chinese. And what often is the case is that you have a foreign owner finding a local company or partner to be the front or face of that operation, provides the registration and details for licensing. It receives the Ghanaian flag, receives the Ghanaian license, and is then actually operated by the foreign company. So the master, you'll note as we go along, all the officers are Chinese on this vessel, as is the case with all the others. I do not know of any of these vessels that actually has a Ghanaian officer on board, but the thing to note is that this is not new. This is not unique to Ghana either. You go to the other side of the planet, the same thing in Fiji, you will find that a number of the Fijian flagged quote unquote local vessels have Chinese names. So this is a phenomenon where protective policies on the fisheries front that require local ownership, local operation, local crew, nevertheless are skirted in different ways. And so this is one of the predominant problems here in Ghana. Really.
So obviously we have gaps in regulations.
Well, the gaps may not be so much in the regulations, but in the implementation of them.
Implementation.
And one of the key elements here is the Declaration of Ultimate Beneficial Ownership. There is a requirement now. It is a light requirement, and it is not well enforced thus far. But were the ultimate beneficial ownership as well as the network of interests fully disclosed, I think we would see a picture that suggests these are neither vessels that are beneficially owned by Ghanaians, nor are they benefiting Ghana. So that is a key question that the new government is, I think, going to have to tackle here. And the Honourable Minister has already delisted 4 vessels. In the 2 months she's been in office, she's revoked the licenses of 4 vessels, one of which was also named Minjing, a different number. But yes, this is something that I think is very well known, but how to approach it, how to deal with it is the next question.
So, question that I want us to try and answer is the issue about communications here. And the report says that the captain tried sending distress messages to a sister ship, but could not establish any due to the attack. The report further goes on to say that the robbers marched all the crew members and locked them in one of the cabins, cut all means of communications, and seized all their phones.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
What do you make of this?
So, I mean, if I were a pirate, I'd do the same thing because I wouldn't want anybody being alerted. But I think one of the things it speaks to is their effort was to contact another ship. It was not to contact the Ghana Navy. It was not to send out a distress signal over Channel 16. It was not an effort to be in touch with Zone F. It was not an effort. So, this is a problem across the maritime sector in terms of knowing exactly what the protocol is for how to respond to a piracy incident. But equally, it speaks to who they thought were most likely to help them, which is interesting because it also speaks to a sense of a more closed community. They didn't go to Ghanaians for help. They went to likely another Chinese vessel. So the challenge here is making sure as well that the fisheries regulations do indeed have sufficient safety requirements concomitant with what we've now experienced with the container and tankers and all the other commercial vessels. We've seen the translation of the best management practices for counter-piracy in East Africa translated over into the Gulf of Guinea. But I don't think that has really been something that's been pushed for fishing vessels. And if you look at really most of the attacks that have occurred since 2021, really 2020, since the end of 2020, most have been against fishing vessels. And so this may be, it's always hard to tell whether you're at the beginning of a trend or if you're dealing with a one-off incident. But if this is indeed the beginning of a trend, we need to ensure that the fishing vessels across the region are better prepared to handle these kinds of incidents.
So let's go to the comments, right? All vessels within Ghana and neighboring waters are advised to exercise extreme caution, increase watchkeepers on night duties, and maintain sharp lookouts within the waters. Coastal law enforcement agencies, especially those in Ghana, are requested to increase presence and surveillance in and around ports as well as at sea. So this circles back to the issue of best management practices.
It does.
But there's also the need to sort of sensitize these actors about these practices, right?
So I'll actually give an example from the Red Sea. It happened recently. There was an armed security team on a vessel called the Tudor that was going through the Red Sea, and they were standing, keeping watch with their weapons pointed to the sky. And they spot a vessel coming towards them. And they spot the vessel coming faster and faster towards them. And they watch with their arms still pointing to the sky as the vessel continues to come towards them, not doing anything about it, not trying to stop it, not trying to alert anyone. And they only turn and run moments before the vessel slams into the hull of their ship. And what this speaks to is that even armed security guards, if they don't know what they're looking for and they aren't trained on how to respond to it, aren't going to be of any help. And so, expecting fishers who are usually looking for fish, not people and pirates, to suddenly change their watchkeeping standards and be effective in that, you're kind of crazy. I mean, you have to sensitize people, as you said. There has to be training. There has to be also protocols. Okay, now you're watchkeeping. You're looking out. You see something. What do you do? And unfortunately, that speaks to a broader regional issue that there needs to be not only a maintenance but an expansion of some of the protocols that came into place during the height of the Gulf of Guinea challenge with piracy. And I think we're coming back to where those issues may be necessary to keep at the forefront.
So it's interesting that you talked about the Red Sea. I want to find out from you, what is one key lesson that you probably think that the Gulf of Guinea region is missing out when it comes to looking at the Red Sea situation as a whole? What is one key lesson that we are missing out?
Well, I think the Red Sea is fascinating because a lot of the attention has gone to the high-end weaponry. So all the way up to the hypersonic missiles, but certainly the ballistic missiles, the higher-end drones that have provided a consistent aerial bombardment of ships in the Gulf of Guinea or in the Red Sea for a long time. This was November 19th, 2023. So we've seen now enough time where those attacks have occurred consistently. Very few of them, those aerial attacks, sunk vessels. Most of the vessels that were sunk by very cheap automated systems that were basically remote control boats with bombs. The availability of nefarious maritime capable technology has exploded over the last few years because of both the Red Sea and Ukraine. And because of innovation in the autonomous space, there's so much that's off the shelf now that can be done to move goods, people even at times between vessels, that if any of that technology came into the hands of somebody who wanted to use it for ill purposes in this region, we could see a new wave of concerns and threats. And I don't want to give anyone ideas for how to attack ships, but I think one of the big lessons is it's very easy to do it. And that's a problem. And so if we aren't vigilant, if we don't maintain some of the structures that have been created for counter-piracy, we could find ourselves scrambling to reestablish them during another crisis. And that's what we don't want. What has been very effective in the Gulf of Guinea is the cooperation. And that cooperation across the Yaoundé architecture is incredibly important. One of the things that hasn't been as effective is interaction and communication with the shipping sector, the overall maritime industry. And it's improved with regard to the shipping lines through the SHADE, the Shared Awareness and Deconfliction process. But there's a lot more work that's needed there. Where it hasn't come in is with the fishing sector. And so if the pirates are indeed, as you would expect, finding the low-hanging fruit that provides them with the highest reward for the lowest risk, they may be now targeting foreign masters on fishing vessels across the region. And that would mean that there's a need for new protocols, new approaches to try to address that issue.
Okay. So you've talked about the shared process and also elements of sustainability. You've talked about the structures that are very important for keeping the region safe. And I want to talk about the issue of funding, the issue of financial resources to help maintain these structures. I think quite recently the SHADE Forum suspended the operations of their communication system, that is Solata. And that also brings up the issue of how governments and stakeholders, both in the private sector, to come together to sort of develop some kind of funding mechanism, look at innovative ways of funding maritime security operations and structures.
I think you just touched on the key word is innovation. I think we're seeing with the retreat of the United States from foreign assistance, we see all kinds of pockets and gaps, and Ghana's certainly not immune to that. For example, there was a fantastic program most of the way down the road where the tuna fleet was going to have electric monitoring systems put on board. So there were going to be cameras and all kinds of sensors that would allow for a constant perpetual monitoring of the tuna fleet. And the industry itself was very much in favor of it. They put in some of the money themselves already. But with USAID having canceled all funding, the remaining funds are not available, and the project remains very much in jeopardy as a result. And so there are all kinds of funding gaps that now exist that didn't even 5 months ago. And I think that speaks to a question of both, as you say, innovation and also will. Where's the will to do what needs to be done to protect the environment, protect culture, protect the economy, and protect the people of the region? And all of that speaks to needing for everyone who has a voice to use it to express why this matters. I think we've talked in the past about wealth blindness in the maritime space and not understanding the value of the maritime domain. And part of that is economic wealth, but part of it is also heritage. I mean, you're looking at coastal communities whose entire way of life for generations has been very systematic. And now that system is broken because there's no fish, or there's no market, or there's not enough funds, or they're spending more on fuel than they get from fish. And the question is, then what? And unfortunately, they're going to innovate too. Yeah. They're going to innovate and do whatever's needed to stay alive. And if that means that tramadol is now more readily available than fish, then we've got an issue. But on the side of trying to actually make things work, we need to come together and see where there's economic interest that may be leveraged to be able to do things. The other thing is there are a lot of projects and programs that I think have budgets that are way bigger than they need to be in certain regards, and others that are way smaller. And so we need to look at, okay, what are we trying to accomplish, and what's really needed? What's the most effective way to get there? So part of that means regular dialogue and engagement with political leadership, engagement with external leadership, being creative on engagement with industry. Businesses sometimes have corporate social responsibility budgets that far exceed the requirements of some of these programs. $800,000, for example, which is roughly what I think is needed for the EMS program, may sound like a lot of money, and it is to an individual, to a small business, but to a multinational company, that's maybe an hour, and that's where we need to be creative in seeing who has an interest in this working, and say, hey, can you help us make it work?
So talking about who has an interest, right, in making this work, you are from the US. Let's talk about the political community and then the business community, right? Trying to wield political will. How has the US approached these issues, right? And in getting political will or political buy-in to invest in ocean wealth?
So it's interesting you bring this question up on a day when the morning stories indicate the reversion to away from some of the regulation and management that we've had in place. The U.S. is changing how it is regulating and governing its fisheries sector, and I think it's ultimately going to be detrimental, because what we had learned was that a well-regulated, tightly regulated, well-enforced fisheries sector benefits enormously all those who are involved legally. Everybody who's involved, from fishing legally, from maintaining quotas, from maintaining the closed seasons, from maintaining the marine protected areas, from maintaining the gear requirements, everybody who stays within those lines benefits greatly. The question is then, how do you deal with those who are outside of it? And that's where we've had very aggressive enforcement, leveraging technology to use all kinds of tools to get there. We also had incredible messaging. So I grew up in Baltimore, and at the time that I was growing up, every single school in Maryland had sessions on Save the Bay. The Chesapeake Bay, which is a critical marine environment that is throughout a lot of Maryland, was dying. It smelled terrible. It was disgusting. If you fell in the water in Baltimore's Inner Harbor, you needed to go to the hospital. The water was so polluted and toxic. That is not the case anymore. The National Aquarium in Baltimore just launched a whole new wetlands project that is now open, showing that they have restored critical parts of the marine environment in the Chesapeake Bay. We've had fish that were even deemed extinct come back, that turned out weren't extinct, and are now coming even off the endangered list. And so there are ways of, with aggressive, rigorous, scientifically based enforcement, extensive public communication campaigns and education, and a general, whole of societal will, ways to make this come back. But everyone needs to understand why and what's in it for them. And unfortunately, the messaging, the communication has not been there thus far in most of the world, and I think that's something we all need to work on, because if you only approach it as an issue of sustainability, some people don't care. The ocean, what's the expression? Sea never dries.
Yes.
Well, it is drying up for Ghana in terms of the fish, in terms of the livelihoods, and I think that the notion that it's so big, it'll be fine, isn't working. But if sustainability isn't something that motivates you, maybe it's economics, maybe it's culture, maybe it's food, maybe it's culinary. So, one of the things to look at is alternative livelihoods for fishers when you have too many. And right at the moment, I think Ghana is overfished at the artisanal sector. So how do you get sustainable income for those fishers? And some programs have tried to pull them into completely different ways of life. Well, the point is, how do you maintain the culture without losing the fishery? So what do they know by virtue of being fisher folk that could be potentially useful in another way? And so, I turned to an example in Peru where some of the fishers that were, they had too many, and some of them were retrained in culinary skills. And now, if you go to Peru, you will find one of the top culinary scenes in the world. They have some of the top restaurants in the world. Okay. Fishers who know fish can be very good in not only procuring but cooking seafood. And so it's created a sort of revival of the culture, but in a new way. So the question is, what matters to you and how do we target that? Because everyone should care about the marine environment. We just need to figure out how to get them to do that.
All right. So we've talked about fisheries, we've talked about piracy, we've talked about governance, we've talked about coastal communities, political leadership, political will. I want us to look at the issue of identifying opportunities, identifying the tools that can address these multiple challenges that we face in the region. What, in your opinion, right, what are the new ways that we can begin to tackle some of these persistent issues of fisheries crime, piracy, and also being able to rail political buy-in to address these issues?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question. I think that's what we should all be asking. I think there are so many new technologies that are coming on that are quite interesting, but there's a danger to that. We have a tendency to assume that technology can replace what humans can do or human innovation, and they cannot. We still need human beings to be directing their time, attention, and efforts to these challenges. And to that, I think what we need to do is figure out how to essentially crowdsource ideas, because there's no one, I as an outsider can't come into Ghana and say, I have the solution. And I certainly can't sell you a solution.
Including and talking about crowdsourcing ideas, including engaging the youth.
100%, and that's actually where I think there are probably more ideas that we could harness than ever before. In fact, when I run exercises, scenario-based exercises, I have a phrase at the beginning that I always use because I'm usually in a military or hierarchical environment, and I always say, good ideas have no rank.
Yes.
And it's the same thing with good ideas have no age. I think you have everybody who is seeing and looking at the marine environment should be considering what can be done to make it a more hospitable place for those who are willing to play within the rules and to do things sustainably, and what can make it more inhospitable to those who are interested in profiteering, in theft, in destruction, in dumping, in piracy, in trafficking, in smuggling, in theft. So we need to work on that collectively, and I think what that requires is a degree of education and engagement. And if you want the political class to understand the marine environment, they're going to have to talk to people. They can't stay in a government building the whole time. There has to be some kind of engagement. They have to see with their own eyes just how tiny the fish are that are coming in. They have to see how empty the Chinese built facilities are.
So, Dr. Ralby, I want us to wrap up the session on the note of good ideas have no rank. What would be your message to the political leadership to the private sector, to the citizenry, right, on what we should pay attention to, what we should look out for, what should be a very proactive action in terms of protecting the environment, the marine environment, and exploiting it for social and economic gains.
I think the message, first of all, is lead with your ears. Listen. Listen to experts who are actually studying the coastal marine environment, the offshore marine environment, who are listening and speaking with and working with the fishers to understand their concerns. So listening is an absolutely critical piece. And if we all listen to each other and then act with integrity, because I think one of the key aspects of the fishery space is that it isn't just about enrichment. It is about culture. It is about heritage. It is about food. It's about livelihoods. It's about so many things. And so when we talk about the marine environment, it might seem out of place, out of mind, out of sight. And it just doesn't generate a lot of emotion for most people.
Yeah.
And yet, if you were to reframe it and say it's not about the marine environment, it's about destroying the cultural heritage of the coast. It's about destroying the fish markets throughout the country. It's about destroying the culinary history and heritage. It means no more tilapia. It means no more smoked fish. It means no more of the things that you associate with being Ghanaian or being from wherever you are. It starts to change the flavor of it a bit. And I think, one of the things that we fail to do is recognize our own culture often and appreciate it until it's gone. And so it's really important to not only lead with your ears and listen, but to recognize that this is about heritage and preservation, not just the marine environment, but of Ghana itself. And that's where I think there's a critical need to shift the focus. I credit my mother, Rahini Ralby, is actually the one who framed it as a cultural issue first in terms of our thinking about this. And even just hearing her say it that way made me start to think of ideas. So, for example, if you look at the canoes across the coast, there are over 12,000. There are many studies that suggest that needs to be reduced. And there are all kinds of different reduction schemes that could be put in place. And unfortunately, a lot of them involve letting them die. And I said, well, why lose that sector in some ways? Why shrink it unnaturally when you could do it in a productive way? So, for example, what if a Ghanaian entrepreneur tried to link with a Ghanaian heritage group elsewhere outside of Ghana that was interested in the canoes? Why couldn't they be sold? They could be sold as canoes. They could be sold as art. They could be sold as landscaping. There are also so many ways that you could integrate the canoes that would pay the fishers for the dying and dilapidated canoes rather than just have them eat the loss. And there's a lot that could be done to be creative in leveraging not just the aspects of the industry, but of that heritage, of that culture. And I think that's where we all need to be more mindful of the human aspects of this. I always say that maritime security is not about protecting the waters of the state against threats. It's about protecting the waters of the state for the enrichment of the state and the betterment of life on land. And that enrichment has to be for the state, the whole state, not a few individuals, not a couple of key personnel, and not foreign nationals. It's about the state, and that's where the focus has to change.
All right. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Sharing your insights.
I so appreciate it. Yeah. It's been a pleasure.
It's a pleasure. It's all mine.